Why do horror games scare us, even when we know they're not real? Why does your heart race when there's no real danger? Why do you keep playing, even as your hands tremble on the controller? It's not just jump scares, it's science. And today, we're diving into the psychology of fear and why horror games are the ultimate fear machines.
The neuroscience of fear. Fear starts here, in the amygdala. This almond-shaped region in your brain detects threats and activates your fight or flight response. Whether it's a growl in the woods or a whisper in a dark hallway, the amygdala doesn't differentiate between real and virtual danger. It triggers the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, flooding your body with cortisol and adrenaline, the same hormonal cocktail released during actual emergencies. Your heart rate spikes, your muscles tense, your vision narrows, a state called tunnel vision, preparing you to run or fight. It doesn't matter if the threat is a zombie or a well-rendered shadow on your screen. Your brain is wired to react first, think later. Evolution didn't anticipate PlayStations. This survival mechanism evolved over millions of years, and horror games, they've learned to exploit it.
Game design that triggers terror. Horror games aren't just scary because of gore or monsters. They're neuropsychologically engineered to manipulate your perception and push your emotional limits. Let's break it down. Restricted vision. You can't see everything. Narrow field of view, shaky cameras, and deliberate obstructions force your brain into hypervigilance. This mirrors real-life stress responses seen in PTSD and anxiety disorders. Sound design. Sound is processed faster than visuals, making it an early warning system. Horror games use binaural audio, whispered voices, sudden silence, or irregular rhythms to induce unease. Powerlessness. Lack of weapons, low stamina, or scripted vulnerability all create a learned helplessness effect. The player adopts a mindset of fear because their options are limited, mimicking real-world trauma responses. Pacing. The best horror games slow down the action, using anticipation as a weapon. Your brain fills in the blanks. Uncertainty is more terrifying than any jump scare. The design doesn't just scare you, it conditions your brain into a cycle of fear and suspense, where even non-events become horrifying.
Why games are scarier than movies.
You've seen horror movies. You've probably even laughed at a few. But horror games? They're experiential, not observational. In a film, you watch someone else run. In a game, you run. Your decisions lead to consequences, giving you agency. And agency activates the prefrontal cortex, increasing your feeling of immersion and personal threat. Research shows that interactivity increases emotional intensity. That's why VR horror is exponentially more terrifying than flat-screen play. Your brain starts fusing with the avatar. Every scare feels closer, more intimate, more real. Add darkness, noise-canceling headphones, and suddenly, this isn't a game anymore. It's you, trying to survive. fear as emotional catharsis.
So, why do we choose to be scared? Why do we put ourselves through panic, sweating, screaming? One word: catharsis. It's the emotional release that follows tension. Horror gives us controlled fear, a safe place to practice panic and release it. The brain gets a dopamine hit after surviving a scare, reinforcing the experience. It's like a workout for your emotions. You're lifting fear and putting it down safely. Psychologists also believe horror taps into our collective unconscious. Ancient symbols like darkness, predators, isolation, all tied to survival. It's not about masochism. It's about mastery.
The darkness within.
Here's the truth. Horror games don't invent fear. They reveal it. They ask, what do you avoid? What makes you uncomfortable? What power are you afraid to lose? The fear of the unknown, of being watched, of being forgotten. Horror taps into primal instincts, but it also toys with our deepest existential anxieties. Games like Silent Hill 2 don't just scare you with monsters, they make you question your own morality. Pyramid Head isn't just a threat, he's a symbol of guilt and punishment, born from the protagonist's subconscious. Psychologists call this projection, a defense mechanism where our mind externalizes inner conflict as something other. This isn't fiction, it's grounded in real psychological theory. According to Carl Jung, what we fear the most often lives in what he called the shadow, the hidden, repressed parts of ourselves we refuse to confront. Horror games bring the shadow to the surface. When you walk through a decrepit hallway, when you hear a whisper behind you, you're not just afraid of what's out there, you're afraid of what's already inside. And that's what makes it so powerful. The monsters, the darkness, the isolation, they aren't the story. You are. And maybe that's the scariest part.
Horror games aren't about dying. They're about surviving, about feeling fear and realizing you're still standing, about learning that even when your heart races, even when your hands shake, you can still move forward. That's why we play. Not for the monsters on screen, but for the ones we conquer inside. The fear of failure, the fear of loss, the fear that maybe you're not as strong as you thought, but you press on, you hide, you run, you fight, and each time you make it out alive. So the next time you boot up a horror game and the room gets quiet and your ears tune in and that sound in the dark makes your skin crawl, listen carefully. That echo, that breath, that trembling step might just be you facing something real inside the game and inside yourself.
If this breakdown made your pulse race, tap that like and drop a comment. What game scared you the most and why? We're just getting started. This is the first episode in the Psychology of Gaming series. If fear fascinates you, subscribe to Pixel Cortex and maybe keep the lights off, because the next one is darker.